Hi, I'm Jess. Today we're opening up on ceremony for enthusiasts, iconoclasts, anarchists, and you. So I am so excited that you joined me. I can't believe it, really. It's so brilliant. So this is Roxy. Roxy Hayde. Roxy is a truly fabulous person, a brand new friend, and also a fellow Brighton person. So we've met here. We've been for a walk on the beach with the dog, and we've had a marvellous time. But also she's got a lot to share with us about celebrancy. She's a celebrant like me, but she's lots of other things besides. So I'm going to read a little bit of stuff about her. She is a Humanist Celebrant, which is different to me. She's accredited by Humanist UK, and that's a really well-known, reputable institution, really, in the UK. She is non-religious, aren't you? You're personalised, but she's not going to be saying you can't use the word God or anything like that, if I know anything about her. So one of the things that I really love about you, Roxy, is this business about having been a facilitator for the Hoffman Process, which has got such an amazing reputation, transformational, intensive personal development. And it's really intense, isn't it? It's like it's a residential thing that you do. And she does it, she's very impressive. She does it in America. She's all over the place all year. Basically encouraging people to get in touch with their inner selves and process all of those things. And the reason I've mentioned it really is a bit of a USP for you, isn't it? And it is absolutely integral to your celebrancy work. And it makes so much sense to me that you would be coming from that place when you do your ceremonies. And I know that couples get in touch with you who also have an affinity with Hoffman. So it would be quite nice to talk a little bit about that. But Roxy's going to share with us everything she has to share that she wants you to hear about what it means to be a celebrant, what it means to be Roxy, what it means to be a Hoffman facilitator, and the ways in which all of those things can affirm our human lives. So I'm going to start by asking you what your favourite ever ceremony is that you've done. And obviously she will love all of you. If you're one of her couples and you're listening, she will love all of you. It might not be one of yours, but it would be really cool if you could just share some of your favourites or one, that's what, anything.
That's such a difficult question because
I know, I'm sorry.
So open with saying it. The great thing about this job is that every ceremony is beautiful because it is so unique. So I don't want to sound like I'm kind of trying to do a palm off catch all there, but I'm just going to start by saying that because they really are like, you're lucky enough to do this work like me, Jess, and it's incredible to be able to just witness so many unique interpretations of people celebrating their love every time. It is wildly different to the time before. That said, for me, an example actually, just a really recent ceremony this summer is a brilliant example of when couples are just completely in the room and completely present, and they're just being completely unashamedly themselves, and everything around the ceremony smacks of authenticity. And when that happens, that something really magical in the room happens where it literally reverberates around everybody who's sitting there watching. And I had a really great example of that just a couple of weeks ago with this lovely couple who, they had a really interesting story. It was about living in different continents, different ends of the world, and their battle to kind of be together and fight for their love. And I say that, but everyone's story is unique and is beautiful. So it wasn't even really about their story, but there's just something in the way that they came with completely open hearts into the ceremony space. And they were just so full of joy and wonder, and they were so present and there for every moment of it. And the look of wonder and just glee on both of their faces as they just sat and watched all of their guests. And there was just this amazing moment about midway through when I kind of looked up and took stock of everybody in the room, and literally every single person was crying. Which is really quite unusual. As a celebrant, yes, of course, people cry all the time in ceremonies, but at the same time, to see literally every single person in the room just so moved And it was just all because of that connection to their own authenticity and their own vulnerability that allowed that.
And that's so much a part of your Hoffman work, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It really is.
Do you know what happened? Do you know why they were so present?
Why they were so present? Do you know what? I don't actually know what it was that they were both bringing in to the room, but I kind of saw them both before, and they both just seemed really relaxed and just really excited and really up for it, and just the love that came across. It was really unparalleled to many ceremonies that I've seen before. And it wasn't that their story was completely romantic or anything. There was a lot of laughs in there as well. I always, when I'm speaking to couples, I always kind of open with a caveat whenever I do discovery calls with people. I say, if you're looking for a kind of hearts and flowers, devastating romance from start to end type celebrant, that really isn't me. I want to be really clear. There's lots of people that is, and I'm really happy to put you in touch or make some recommendations for other people. But it's like, that's not my vibe at all. Like, if you want someone,
not me either.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's either of us, Jess. So if you want levity, if you want lols, if you want it to be funny and lighthearted and uplifting and joyful, that's more my bag. And of course, it's gonna have moments of poignancy and beautiful, moving, tear-jerking 1 minute, belly laugh the next, because it's a wedding ceremony. We're there to take people on a journey. That's what it's about. But also, I'm not somebody who really deals in the arts and the hearts and flowers end of the spectrum.
So you're about being real, aren't you? You must have heard a lot of very traumatic stories in your work. When you've done these retreats and these intensives, you will have heard about what real life is like and what real love feels like and how complex that is. So it makes perfect sense to me that you're not going to be all hearts and flowers. I don't see how you could be, really, when you've done that kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And one automatically feeds the other. So I actually trained to be a Hoffman facilitator, which is something that I still do now. And I did that training, a good few, maybe coming up to, I qualified about over 3 years ago doing that now. So I'm actually newer to celebrancy because I did that qualification after I was already a facilitator for Hoffman. So I absolutely wouldn't be here being able to do this work in the way that I do it if it wasn't for informed by the fundamentals and the training and all of that stuff that you need to be able to do in deep transformational work and group facilitation. Like just that kind of reverence and being able to really hold space. And it feeds through every part of, whether it's the couple's journey, being able to really listen and engage and really hear what people are saying and read behind what they're saying when they're telling me their story, through to the kind of standing up in front of a room of 200 people sometimes and being able to be kind of present and grounded. Yeah.
That's amazing. What is it that the course taught you, or the process taught you, that you are able to give to your couples that is about that? What specific thing? Is that probably a hard question I'm asking you there.
It's a big question, and I think really to answer it properly, I've got to be able to rewind to when I actually did the Hoffman process. So just to just to speak to what it is, because there's probably
that would be really helpful. Yeah,
what the hell is it? It is a very intensive personal development. To use the word retreat, is too light. It's in a retreat setting, so you hand your phone in and you go and you check in for a week-long intensive. So yeah, it's a residential course, and we essentially spend a week getting really deep into childhood, and focusing on the wounds of the past, basically, that yes, on the upside of that, make us who we are for the better and holding on to all of those wonderful things. But really, a lot of it is about examining who you are now in life and the bits of that aren't serving you, and being able to kind of step into the past and make the connection between past and present. This is who I am now and how I'm showing up in life and how I've been taught to do life. And looking back to our kind of childhood rearing and programming and the stuff, the pattern behavior and the ways of being in the world that we took on as a result of surviving whatever childhood you were born into. It's an intensive, difficult at times, but really beautiful week. That quote, it was the best of times and the worst of times, always comes to mind whenever, from my experience of having done the process, obviously, and then facilitating it, seeing people really face themselves and meet themselves and the work that they're there to do. And it's a necessary unraveling to get to a place of leaving, and people describe it as being like an emotional reset. A lot of the time, being able to, it's a journey back to self, essentially, past all the ways of being and the layers and the patterns of behavior we take on. Yeah.
I love that. Back to yourself. And I'm thinking about what you said about how that relates to ceremony. So you've got journeying, you've got beginning, coming in with the past, being in the present, moving to the future. That is ceremonial, isn't it, as well? So all about preparing the space, entering into, and I mean, Gita always talks a lot about intention. So you're setting a space, you're intending to do a thing, you're, beginning it, you're making people feel safe, you're holding the room, the process, and then talking about who we are now and who are we in relation to other people. So I think people maybe who haven't had ceremonies like ours maybe don't realize that it isn't all about, because like you said, you're not into flowers and roses, you're probably not into gimmicks either, so you won't be doing all bells and whistles, or it's not like an entertainment or a show. It's about this processing and moving, isn't it? And that makes a lot of sense, actually.
That's what I was going to say. So you asked me before something about how doing the work that I do there helps feed into this, and I think it's too, well, there's a couple of different ways of approaching that, but basically it's through actually going through and doing the Hoffman process myself as a participant, which I did getting on for 10 years ago. That really taught me a fundamental sense of worthiness that I didn't have before, and a sense of self-worth, and that I am enough that was just missing before in my life. And there's something about having that enables me to do the work that I do across all different disciplines in a really open-hearted way. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Oh, completely makes sense. I've been thinking a lot about that and about being a celebrant, and obviously moving to Brighton and just being 10 years into my career, starting again in a new environment. I wanted to, and we've talked about this over coffee, but the thing of just sort of reinventing oneself, but also really looking at who one is authentically in one's life. And then as a celebrant, by extension, in my career, what am I bringing from my life experience? And one of the things that strikes me as really, really important is this business of accepting oneself, so that you bring everything of who you are. You're not trying to be the celebrant down the road. You're not, when you meet with people, you're not projecting anything onto them. You're just accepting them as entirely as they are, which is really important both for weddings and for funerals. People get quite nervous when they call us. They don't know what we're going to be like, what we're going to think of their relationships, And so knowing that when you call a celebrant, you're going to be accepted as you are, because that celebrant has done the work of accepting themselves as they are, feels really important to me. Yes. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I've got loads of other questions for you here.
Yeah.
Carry on.
There's something as well in that around, this kind of privileged position that we're both in, of when we sit and work with clients, I can't speak to the funeral side because I don't do that, but certainly on weddings, when I'm doing planning meetings with people, that intimacy that is created when you're sitting with a couple and you're asking them loads of really beautiful and often in-depth and quite intrusive questions. I often feel like a voyeur kind of sitting there and being this kind of facilitator of asking them these questions and then just allowing them to speak. And often it's really beautiful and moving, and people feedback, wow, it was worth it just for that conversation alone.
Yes.
We got to say things to each other that we've never said, you know, or that we don't say very often, at least. So that act is lovely. Yeah, isn't it? It's a really privileged and unusual position, sitting there with people and kind of saying, you know, John, tell me about why you love Lorraine. Tell me about what inspires you about her. What does she mean to you? Yeah, totally.
And they look at you. And obviously, we send our questionnaires out in advance, don't we, to our couples? And sometimes I go through it with them because they actually just haven't been able to do it. And sometimes if they write like a Mr. and Mrs. quiz or Mr. and Mrs. quiz, Mr. and Mr. quiz, whatever, they look at them and they are going to say, these are my answers. This is what I think about my partner. And this is what I think about my partner, what their answers will be. And then we get them together and you'll say, what do you think he said was his favourite thing about you? And quite often the partner is a bit stumped. They don't know what is the favourite thing about me. And that's quite interesting. And when I really think about it, I haven't asked those questions of myself and I haven't sat with my partner and had those conversations because I've never really needed to. And also the other question I always ask is about something funny and quirky about you. And there's every single one of us has a something really, really funny. And I've got one at the moment, and he won't mind me sharing it, it's all been agreed. But his quirky thing was, they were like, oh, we don't think we have anything. I said, no, you do, for sure. And it was that and this goes back to childhood and childhood conditioning and how hard it is to break those habits. He has a thing where you have to have a piece of white paper in his car, and a white car, because if ever he sees an ambulance, he has to touch something white and count to 20. And you would never, ever have got that answer. So those are the kinds of things, aren't they, that you put in instead of, you know, hearts and flowers, because actually they're more meaningful and they're really funny. And most people will know about that piece of white paper, won't they? And not quite know why it's there. So that's really fun. I'm going to ask you about that favourite ceremony. Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say that's what I would want to hear if I was at a wedding ceremony as well. I want to hear stuff like that as a guest.
The weird shit.
Absolutely. The weirder the better.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about your own ceremony, Roxy? Are you able to talk about one of your own ceremonies that you've, like your wedding or anything that you really loved about it, that you're really glad you did?
When I got married, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, this is an interesting one. It probably fits more under the question of what would you change about your wedding? Because
that was coming up next, so we can do them together.
Oh, really? Brilliant. So basically, I got married about 6 years ago now, and I was very aware of humanist ceremonies and celebrant ceremonies, and I'd mainly heard about them in the context of funerals. I think I'd been to one years before, but it was very kind of wafty, pagan-y style. And I'd heard about, which again isn't really my style as a celebrant, but I've got a lot of space for it. Again, it's deeply steeped in ritual, which is something that transcends through every part of my life. So it's, a lot of time for it, but it's not my style as an actual celebrant. But I was aware of celebrant ceremonies, but I didn't actually think that because we were getting married in a licensed venue that we could have a celebrant. And the kind of offering from the venue was a list of registrar contact details, and so I just didn't think naively that it was a possibility. So when I look back on our wedding, and my God, it was a fun wedding. Like people still talk about it being like the most fun wedding ever now, years on. It was like a 3-day festival style wedding, and we had all of our friends and performing and loads of music. Daft Punk played at our wedding, not the real Daft Punk, but some friends who do a Daft Punk tribute act. We had a forest rave. It's a shame we weren't friends then, Jess, because you would have absolutely loved it. It was just the best, the most amazing few days ever. But when I look back, I wish now, especially knowing what I know now, and that I did do every day of my life, being a celebrant, wow, that could have really made that part of the day pop. And certainly within the registrar confinement, we made the absolute most of it. We, I had a friend who had written a beautiful poem that she'd written. We got another friend come and do a kind of mini circle of love ritual, which is something that I often do in ceremonies as a celebrant. So that was we actually personalized it way more than the registrar doing the ceremony would have liked. There was some side looks. But within all of it, I just think now, God, wow, imagine if we could have really told our story in a way that we're able to tell the stories of the couples that we work with.
So on that topic, we should share your recent experience with a conversation with a registrar who may or may not be named.
Yes, yeah. I was just chatting to you about this earlier. So, I just had a frustrating conversation with the big registry office in London yesterday because I had to call up about something related to a couple that I was working with. And we got onto the topic of whether they would allow a humanist or any kind of an independent, any kind of celebrant to come in and do a ceremony as part of the legal ceremony, because sometimes couples do want that. And I have worked with registrars in that way who have previously been quite flexible at different venues, and it's not been that it's made for a disjointed ceremony, but we've managed to make it work. But I just had a very frustrating conversation with this registrar who told me that not only was it that not a possibility, but also that they now offer humanist style ceremonies within their registry office setting, and that they can do everything that a celebrant can. And they'll tell the couple's story, and it's deeply personalized. And I was just left going, what the hell? This is just the most confusing conversation ever. Because it turned out that by deeply personalized, they're really talking about being able to include your own readings. And there's some text boxes that you can personalize and add a few lines, I'm guessing maybe a few paragraphs of information about you that you write yourself as a couple. And it's just read out and inserted into the registrar's script and read out. So it's definitely the same.
And I mean, if for our listeners, if you, like Roxy, went into the venue thinking, oh, that's an option and it seems perfectly fine, it seems the same as an independent celebrant or a humanist celebrant, what's the difference? It's all very personalized. We are here to tell you. And really, if you think about what we've just been talking about process, about that self-acceptance, about engaging with you on a really deep level and hearing your story from that point, that's very different to just putting in a few vows that you might have made up, because the process is what brings you to those vows in the first place. So don't be fooled, I would say.
Absolutely. Do not be fooled. And it was delivered in a very well-rehearsed sales pitch that I'm sure they say to dozens of couples that call up each day as well. And I guess the upside is that they must be threatened by us and the work that we're doing to feel that they have to personalize weddings in such a way, even though it's not really personalization. We can pretend it's personalization. But that said, even if it was deeply personalized, which it's not, this is stuff that you've written about yourself as a couple. This isn't somebody getting to know you and who's a professional writer and is able to distill all of that information and write something beautiful and moving and funny about you and your story. It's just two completely different offerings.
I was watching something yesterday with Bill Bailey. I don't remember the name of it. It was about artists, and I have always considered what we do an art form. And I'm from a creative background. I used to work in an art centre, and and you're really into art as well. You've got an artistic background as well. And this person, the whole show is about showcasing people who've lived amazing lives or done amazing things. And this person that they were showcasing had worked in the NHS for years and set up a charity which was to do with knife crime, because he was a surgeon and he was bringing in all these patients and having to stitch them up after knife crime incidents. And he set up this charity where all the causes of that were dealt with rather than him having to deal with the symptoms. And the premise of the program is that they create a piece of art. They bring in an artist who matches the person, much as we would with our couples and our families. They bring in the artist, they have a long conversation like we do, they see them in their context, they listen to their motivations, they hear the story behind why. In this person's case, his brother had died through a knife attack. So he had been motivated by that to do all this work. And the artist then went away with that story, with photographs, and created these amazing sculptures of this person. And then the family came in and it was all unveiled and everybody cried, including me, watching from home. And one of the reasons it moved me so much was because that's what we do. So when we work with our couples, that's the level of engagement that we're involved in. And we are creating a work of art from that couple's story and that couple's vision. So we might ask for, what are your colours going to be? What will your flowers look like? What's the venue? Show me a photograph, or you might visit the venue if you can. And then you hear the story behind why they met and where they met. Like with Roxy, you're hearing the story about what brought her to this point in her life. It's the same if you're a couple and you're listening. It's the same. We want to know because we're really, really keen we love people. It's like a nice form of nosiness and curiosity. So we want to hear what the artwork will be as a result of your story. What kind of artwork do we need to create for you and with you? So it's collaborative and it is really like that. It's like the unveiling. When you get to the ceremony, it's like unveiling a work of art. And suddenly you are the center of that and you are that artwork. And that's why they're all so different, I think. So I loved that.
Yeah, amazing.
I can't remember the name of it. It's on ITV or something. But I can't watch these things. I always cry. I'm just terrible.
Same.
So that's all part of the self-acceptance. I thought I would get I thought I'd get to a point doing my work where I was no longer moved by things. And there are celebrants that do say that they don't cry anymore. But unfortunately, no. So if you want an empathetic celebrant, then So what's your current project that you'd like to share with everybody? Something that you want them to know about that you're currently involved in? It's exciting.
Oh my gosh, that is I hadn't thought about that question. What is my current project that I want to share? Well, I mean, it's completely off topic.
Off topic's fine.
Yeah. It's completely off topic. But my a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends, in fact, is we were talking when I saw you last week. Jess has a stage 4 brain cancer, and we've been a couple of friends and I have been kind of rallying round and created a bit of a fundraising committee. And we have spent the last week or two putting together, since she got this new diagnosis, the cancer was back again for a third time, and this time it's really aggressive. We have put together this crowdfunder that just launched yesterday with a beautiful video that we've, a good friend of ours who's a director put it together with using clips of all of us. And it's basically just gone crazy. It's gone from, it was launched yesterday morning and the crowdfunder's on, I think, 40 grand now a day later. And there's all kinds of TV opportunities and press. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Before you go on, say exactly what it is so we can crowdfund and our audience can crowdfund as well.
Oh, thank you. I can put the link in the chat for you as well. It's called, the actual crowdfunder itself is called Cordelia's Together for Tomorrow Treatment Fund. That's it there. And you'll see my mug in the video.
Oh.
Yeah. It's just beautiful to see, like, the groundswell of support of what happens when people galvanize behind something. And we kind of strategized it where everyone was to put it on their social media at a certain time. And it's just gone crazy. And I think we've got about 1,000 different people who've donated now, most of which no one's ever met. And it just has taken on a life of its own, and it's gone all around the world. And just in 24 hours. It's it's really amazing.
What it actually is, what the aim of it is.
So Cordelia has a stage 4 brain cancer, and it's inoperable. So the goal of this now is to help afford her life extending treatment so that she's got more time to spend with her little girl, Lolly, who's 7 years old. She's already transcended every odd and every statistic. It was just 2018 when she was diagnosed, and she was basically told with this type of brain cancer that she had about a year to 18 months life expectancy, and that was 5 years ago, and she's still going. So yeah, she's just the most amazing, magnetic, happy person, and she's just not let this diagnosis define her at any step. It's really lovely.
She's young, isn't she?
She's 40. Yeah. So she was 36.
So here's these stories.
Yeah.
Well, and so people you've made a film about her life and her story, and if we watch it, we can watch it and then we can donate.
Yes.
And the money is it in America that the treatment is, or?
We're unsure at the moment. The next step is for her to have a biopsy, which will determine the best course of action from that. So it depends on where in the world has treatment that would suit her, and will be suitable for her. But it's basically the NHS are only able to offer palliative chemotherapy at this point, which isn't going to cut the mustard. So,
well, I don't think it's off topic at all, because obviously, as you know, ceremonies and life events, death, birth, marriages, how we live with, our immortality, rituals around that are all part of what we do. And actually what you're doing with that film is telling the story, isn't it?
We really are. And it's almost, watching it is almost like a love letter to Cordelia from her friends. It's really beautiful and really moving. And in that way, as I talked about a ritual being really important and extending through every part of my life. So, with the work I do on the Hoffman Process, it's deeply, deeply rooted in ritual and symbolism. It's woven through every part of the process. And I think personally, it's one of the things that makes it so impactful and profound for people. And people literally leave with having had a life-changing experience that stays with them through their lives as a result of what's galvanized there. And the ritual transcends through that, obviously through the celebrant work, which is an act of ritual in and of itself, and it's, interwoven from start to end in ceremony. And then in my personal life as well, for example, going back to my friend, we just held a beautiful, I've got a big fierce, amazing group of women that I'm surrounded by all the time. We've both been friends for many years. Everyone's a bit of a force to be reckoned with. And we hold something called, in the best possible way, and we hold something called, a few of us get together and hold what we call a sister circle. And we used to do it every month when everyone lived in London, and everyone's scattered around all over the place now, so it doesn't happen with as much consistency. But it's basically everyone just getting together, and it's a kind of formulaic, a structured way of being with each other, where we talk about our celebrations, we talk about our challenges, we set intentions with each other for ourselves and for the world around us. And it's just a beautiful ritual. And it's something that, in the case of my friend who I talk about, we sat down together a week ago and we spent an evening, and we tailored it more so that it was about her. But it's basically women coming together and the collective force and the power that brings.
And it's so lovely because ritual has really had a bit of a bad rap as a word. And I think people quite often think of ritual in terms of maybe horror movies, or I don't know, weird stuff happening in the night in the forest, which is probably also good. But we're not always, what we're not talking about is boiling stuff in cauldrons. And I'm quite keen to do some, I'm doing menopause ceremonies, and that I'll be drawing.
Yes, I love
what you're talking about.
I love this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to do a bit more about that really, and do a podcast around that as well. But I think the ritual needs to be reclaimed, and especially in a secular society, in a post-Christian society in the UK, ritual sort of lost its power in that we haven't known how to reinvent it. And I think that you're doing that in your daily life, and it's clearly becoming more apparent that as human beings, we do need it. But the fact that you're doing that with her now, in the here and now, there's a lot at the moment about living funerals. And I think a lot of people find that quite alarming. But in a way, what you're doing is similar, because it's not only strengthening for everyone around her and for her, it's also preparing for what eventually comes, and at the same time remaining hopeful. So rituals like that are a place for hope, and living funerals are too. It doesn't have to be something really depressing.
Absolutely. I think if I had the foresight of knowing that I was going to die, I would be all over the living funeral concept. I really love it. I
think you'd have a festival.
A living festival, absolutely. Just try and stop me.
Well, I'd really like it if you didn't die. Ideally, I'd like you to stick around for a while. We've only just met.
I know.
That would be...
That is my goal, but we've all got to die at some point, you know? It's the only thing that's we're sure of in life, really, isn't it?
There's not much else we're sure of, is there, really, apart from love. One thing I wanted to say was, I was looking at your website, and having known you, that you said that you really celebrate love, and that's what you're called. Roxy Celebrates Love, and we'll put in a minute, we'll just go over where to find you. But Roxy Celebrates Love, and I love that. And then when I looked at what you'd said about yourself and your history, it made a lot of sense, like love in all its forms. And I think it's not necessarily a given that we can experience love in life, but I think and hope that we all have the capacity to love, and we all hope to be loved in return. And that isn't flowers, and it isn't, it isn't all this, like you said, is not, what was it you said? Flowers and...
Hearts and flowers.
Hearts and flowers. Yeah. So tell everybody where they can find you, and tell everyone again about Cordelia and where we can find that. And then we'll put all the stuff in the show notes as well.
Yes, lovely. So you can find me on all modern platforms, Instagram, website, you name it. It's Roxy Celebrates Love. And my friend Cordelia, her GoFundMe campaign is called Cordelia's Together for Tomorrow Treatment Fund.
That would be really nice. And I think also it would be nice for people to pick up on that concept, because I don't think I've really heard of it before. And I met one of the brides I'm working with. Her sister's very poorly, and I put her onto that organisation, Gift of Wedding, where for those of you who are going through this kind of thing at the moment, they basically do a free wedding for you. So if you found out that you have a life-limiting illness and you are looking to get married and you don't have the funds, they will do everything for you. And I had this amazing thing. So I always think, someone said to me once, you have more of an impact on people with the things that you don't even know that you've done than you do with the things you go out of your way to make a difference with. And I had made a massive difference to this person's life, completely by mistake, completely forgotten. I just recommended Gift of a Wedding, and they rang, and sure enough, they're having this amazing wedding with brand new dress, everything done for them. And they were just really, really grateful and really moved by it. Yeah, so that's something, if you're listening out there and you know you have a life-limiting illness, you'd like to get married, you don't have the money, look up Gift of a Wedding. But I think also just sharing about Cordelia and about that story will be really nice for people to find out what they can do, because obviously it's not that uncommon a story, unfortunately.
It really isn't that uncommon a story. And the thing that's made a real difference this week in terms of the interest that we've had with press, etc., is that her 7-year-old daughter is running a marathon for her to fundraise. So she's basically running over 7 days, 5 kilometers each morning before school with her friend. And it's been incredible. It's turned from this thing with just these 2 7-year-old girls running through Hampstead Heath together to they've picked up more and more people each day. So it's turned into this kind of like Forrest Gump situation now, where this morning I saw a video earlier there was like other school kids, there was parents, teachers, loads of people involved. And it's getting bigger and bigger each day, the more people who hear about it.
Really, that's incredible. And that is just, and when you feel, I love this expression, the full body yes. which is what I feel about my podcast, and you can see why now. But when you do things like that, all the hair stick up on my, like, you know, someone has said, I heard someone say she feels goosey. I really love that expression. I feel goosey all because that's
I love that.
really lovely. It's so life affirming, and it's so exciting, and it is about community. It's about shared experience. It's about coming together. There you go. I give you Roxy Hayde. I know all the best people.
Hayde.
And I was seeing you next week. Hayde, not Hyde. Roxy Hayde, not Roxy Hayde.